Why, hello, my loves, and welcome back to Spook Manor. Are you here for yet another spooky tale? Well, you're in luck, for I was recently introduced to a terrifying creature, one that is the embodiment of all the darkness hidden deep within the human soul. It is here where I will share with you the inner battle of good and evil, a battle that everyone must face at some point in their pitiful mortal lives. We will begin our journey by following two sisters who are desperately hanging on to what is little is left of their integrity and personal inner strength, while they face the freezing cold nature of mankind's hunger and lust for greed. Do you care to walk with us as we make our way through the blinding darkness that resides on the cavernous edge of insanity? Then let's begin. Emily and Amelia came from a very wealthy family. They had all they ever wanted growing up, except perhaps the love of caring parents. It seemed no one noticed when their mother died 4 years ago, but now that their horrible father had passed, unknown family members came from all over to get their piece of the pie. However, the vast inheritance fell upon Emily, Amelia, and their two heartless brothers. Their father had taught them to be greedy, and that they had to fight for what was theirs with bitter hearts. "It is the way to success," he always said, and he made a point of destroying many lives by his horrible way of life. All of his children carried this attitude with them, except perhaps for young Emily, who ended up with less than her share because of her gentle and giving nature. While her siblings found their father's brutal business policies a dark and prosperous gift, all Emily ever wanted was a love for something greater than money. She cherished the idea of a loving family, even though most of her relatives were incapable of expressing such emotions. And as with everything else in her life, her lack of fight left her with far less than her siblings when it came to the inheritance. Were it not for her sister Amelia, she likely would not have received anything at all. Amelia was a fighter like her father and brothers. Though she came across cold-hearted most of the time, she had a certain love and fondness for what she believed was Emily's shortcomings. Being that Emily was the only blood she considered to actually be family, she took it upon herself to stand up for her weak little sister whenever possible, while also taking advantage of her at the same time. Everyone hated their father, despite the fact that he gave them so many things throughout their lives. However, compassion and love were not any of those things, and this left a darkness within all of them. As the bitter legal battle ensued, against sweet Emily's wishes, the brothers all left with a promise to never speak with their sisters, or each other, ever again. They greedily took what they could, and that was the end of it. After the ordeal, the two sisters sat at a fine restaurant for lunch downtown. As Amelia raged with fire in her veins, Emily sat quiet with a broken heart. After a long time of Amelia venting had passed, Emily finally broke in. "Do you remember that time Dad took us ice fishing?" Taken aback, Amelia replied, "I almost forgot about that." "Yeah, why?" "It was the only time Dad was ever happy. I think that's the only fun thing we ever did with him. It's like he was a different person for once." "Why does it matter anyway?" Amelia replied, disgruntled. "Well, they're selling the land, dividing it up between us. I was just thinking that it would be fun to go ice fishing up there one last time, for old time's sake," Emily said, with tears welling up in her eyes as she stared at her dark coffee. And for the first time since their father's passing, Amelia felt sadness. This was their last chance to relive their one good childhood memory with their father. Soon she agreed to the adventure, and the two made plans for a weekend getaway, with Emily doing all of the work and planning, of course. It was the coldest part of winter up in the Great Lakes region, and the land they would be staying on was vast and far-reaching. Not a soul could be found for miles around. The road was kept clear, resulting from decades of their father and his friends traveling up there each winter. The area would be extremely quiet, though, as this time his friends would not be present. The two women snatched up their father's luxury ice fishing RV before it was put on the market and made their way to the frozen lake and woodland. Casually, they pulled up on the ice and settled in. Being the multi-millionaire that their father was, the RV was simple to use, and they began fishing almost immediately. Amelia was both shocked and impressed by Emily's secret nature skills. She had no idea Emily was such a capable outdoorsman. It was starting to set in how much time they had lost over the years, and how little they knew about each other anymore. Greed had taken over much of Amelia's life, and she was beginning to realize what she had lost as a result. Emily was so giving, preparing the food, the heaters, and making sure her high-class city sister was happy out in the frozen wonderland. When Amelia had finally caught a fish, Emily suggested they toss it back into the water. She had already prepared a nice dinner, and there was no need to take anything from nature. In an attempt to be funny, Amelia tossed the fish out the door and onto the open ice, laughing about how silly the thing looked flopping around, being so pathetically defenseless. Promptly, Emily protested. She begged her sister to let her go and get it, and to put it back into the water. But she backed down as always when Amelia reprimanded her, accusing her of having no sense of humor at all. Emily's heart sank in silence as she tried to ignore the slow death of the poor creature outside. As night fell, Amelia promptly took the large bedroom in the back, and Emily slept on the fold-out couch. During the darkest part of the night, something slammed hard against the RV, waking Amelia. It was then that she heard a horrifying, high-pitched cackling, a strange laughter, like a hysterical person mixed with a raspy animal cry. Quickly, she opened the bedroom door to find Emily sitting by the window. "Did you hear that?" Amelia asked. Sleepily, Emily turned to look at her. "I think it's coyotes or wolves. They must have come up because of that poor fish you tossed out," she replied without moving. "Really? Wow! Are we in danger?" "Not as long as we stay in here," Emily stated as she stared out at the tree line along the water's edge. Then she picked her head up with a twinkle in her eye and a slight smirk. "Or it could be a Wendigo." "A what? Don't you remember Jacob telling us about that when we were kids?" "Jacob?" Amelia looked puzzled. "Yeah, our cousin Jacob. Man, it's been years. We were so little back then. His dad was part of that indigenous tribe, and he would scare us around the fireplace during sleepovers with Native American folklore. Come on, I know you remember." Amelia laughed. "All I remember is that you were the one who was scared." "It scared you too," Emily laughed. "Well, you'll have to refresh my memory," Amelia said while starting a teapot and sitting down beside her sister. "Okay, but you have to promise to not get scared," Emily teased. It was then that another cackling laugh shrieked from outside, and Amelia rolled her eyes. "Okay," Emily began. "This is what the hunters used to tell the children of the tribe. It is a lesson about preservation. The fear was that if they overhunted and didn't preserve the wildlife in the summer, then they would starve in the winter, and the tribe would die off. It is said that this happened once, and that the people of the tribe actually had to eat each other. Yes, cannibalism, to survive." "Ew!" Amelia cut in. "That's not all, though. They taught that those who eat the flesh of another human would go insane and become a Wendigo, a horrible monster that would search the earth for more humans to eat. They would be consumed by an endless starving hunger and craving for human flesh. They could no longer feel love or caring for anyone or anything anymore, and that they were doomed to walk the earth for all time and eternity. They say if you are greedy, you'll draw them to you." "Well, if anyone could draw a Wendigo to him, it would be our family," Amelia half joked. Emily smiled and continued. "It is said that the craving they feel is so intense that they will eat away at their own lips and are skin and bones from lack of other nutrients." Just then, there was another howling cackle much closer to the camper than before. Slightly rattled, Amelia poured their tea and they sat there watching the woodland outside in silence. The chamomile was helping them relax, and sleep began to take hold. Amelia thought she could see what looked like a person under one of the trees off in the distance. The shadowy figure seemed to shift from person to animal and back to person again. But she knew no person could possibly be out there. They were too far from civilization for that to even be possible. Assuming it was a trick of the eyes, she calmly told her sister goodnight and went off to bed. The next day was a relaxing one. The nature around them was eerily quiet, though, and the fish were sparse. They enjoyed each other's company so much that time seemed to pass quickly, despite the strange silence that surrounded them. As the sun was starting to set, Amelia finally caught something, and as she pulled hard, there was a sudden weak scratching at the RV door. This took Amelia by surprise, and the fish got away. "Why did you do that?" she called out in anger. "What?" Emily replied from the bathroom. Then, as though in response to her question, came a faint knocking from the outside door. Getting up to look, Amelia almost fell backwards at the sight before her. An extremely tall, skeletal man was kneeling in the snow. He had long, stringy black hair dangling from his mostly bald head. His skin was ghostly white and tightly stretched from emaciation. His clothing was ripped and tattered. Amelia thought he had been attacked by an animal, as there was no way anyone would be dressed in such little clothing this far away from any town. His foggy, gray, sunken eyes stared up at her, pleading weakly for help. His receding lips had bleeding and seeping sores around them, as though he was suffering from some type of horrible frostbite. Amelia quickly called to her sister, and they helped the poor man in. Emily threw a warm coat around him and handed him some warm tea. Quickly they bombarded the man with questions. He was so strange, though, and didn't answer or even blink. He just stared at the girls, whoever was closest to him, and would grunt on occasion. But he did not drink any of the warm liquid in his hands. Amelia stepped over to the door, stating she was going to step out in hopes of getting reception to call 911. It was then that the man started a grunting sort of laugh and stared at Emily. He opened his mouth to reveal sharp, pointed, rotted teeth that appeared unhuman, and a massive wad of drooling foam poured out over his snake-like chin. Emily screamed, and the man lunged towards her with the same horrifying, cackling laugh they had heard from the night before. He was assaulting her with an unexpected yet powerful strength, and was biting at her throat and arms. Flashes of crimson flew through the air between each of his animal-like screams. Instinct took over, and Amelia grabbed a small kitchen knife sitting on the counter. She fought with everything she had to save her little sister. Emily's screams of terror were matched in intensity by Amelia's warrior cry. She stabbed the zombie-like man, but his strength was too much for her, and he threw her like a rag doll to the front of the vehicle. Seeing that Amelia was the stronger of the two women, his drooling thirst turned towards her. Despite her shock and daze from having been thrown about, Amelia raced to escape out the door. As soon as she landed in the snow and scrambled to the front of the RV, the man came around the corner and began to approach her. He had somehow grown several feet in height. His little clothing shredded more as he grew. It was nearly dark outside, but she could clearly see her sister's blood smeared all across his white face and chin. Amelia crawled backwards and called out to her sister as she tried to escape. "Help me, Emily! Save me!" It was then that Amelia saw her life flash before her eyes. All of the horrible, selfish things she had done. How she took advantage of her little sister so many times. All of the people she had hurt in her lifetime because of her greed. And she could even feel the pain that poor fish had suffered as it lay dying on the ice the night before. She was consumed by an overwhelming irony that she too was about to die in a similar fashion. It was then that the man came down on her, ripping at her flesh while she fought him, feeling all the pain she had ever inflicted on others. But then a thunderous bang rang out across the lake. There was Emily, standing with a 12-gauge shotgun. The beast turned to look at her with glowing yellow eyes in the darkness. Suddenly, she ran towards the monster, Amelia screaming at her to stop. "No, Emily, save yourself!" The beast had turned and leapt into the air at Emily. Then another loud bang echoed across the frozen lake. The beast was thrown back by the blast and slid across the ice with a bright red smear. Emily then shot at the monster again, leaving yet another red wave and dent in the cold ice. With sheer adrenaline pulsing through her, Emily ran, blood-soaked, to her sister. With all of her strength, she pulled Amelia up, and together they ran back to the RV. Amelia started to call 911, knowing they shouldn't leave the scene before authorities arrived. Both girls knew there was no way anyone or anything could survive both those shots, especially the one at point-blank range. But as Amelia fought with no reception, screaming at her phone to work, Emily stopped and pointed out the windshield to the creature laying on the ice. Somehow, the thing was moving. It sat up and faced the girls. They could see the largest wounds beginning to heal itself on his chest. They both screamed as the thing stood up and started walking towards the RV. Emily ran to lock the door as Amelia fumbled with the keys. Stepping on the gas, she took off in a shot, running over the creature as she went. Emily ran to look out the back window. Though the beast lay crumpled in a disfigured heap, it soon began to move again and pull itself together. Emily screamed for Amelia to hurry, and they didn't stop until they made it to the nearest town. Upon arriving at the hospital, they reported the whole incident to authorities. And though the police did a thorough investigation and found a mess left behind from the encounter with the horrible creature, the beast itself was never found. Something changed in Emily and Amelia after that experience. Amelia had gained a newfound appreciation for life, not only in herself, but in all things. She found gratitude in being able to give back, donating her portion of the land to the local Native American tribes, whose teachings of preservation and sacred life had given her a spiritual paradigm shift. These wise people knew how to keep this thing at bay, and her gift was to ensure their teachings would be shared for future generations to come. And Emily finally found the caring, loving family she always wanted in Amelia's newfound nature. So tell me, my loves, have you met a Wendigo? Was it in fact a paranormal being, or perhaps a part of you, hidden deep within the crevices of your own greedy mind? Or was it in the form of someone you once knew, or know now? Please comment down below, and like and subscribe for more fictional stories that are often of actual urban legends and sometimes have historical reference. See you next week, and have a good night.